Welcome back to Kababayan Today. Now, one of my favorite portions of our show. Let's watch No History, No Self with Professor Brandon Riley.
February is Black History Month, a time when we Americans commemorate the accomplishments, trials, and tribulations of our African-American brothers and sisters. For Filipinos in the U.S., it provides an occasion for us to reflect on the gains and enduring challenges of a people who, like us, have faced historic discrimination simply because of the color of their skin. I'm filled with sorrow every time I think about what African-Americans have endured in the U.S. For most of American history, they suffered through daily violence, whippings, rape, and worse, as slaves. It took the Civil War from 1861 to 1865 to formally bring an end to slavery. Yet soon after the passage of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which ended legal slavery at last, African Americans found themselves subject to Jim Crow segregation. They only had access to public spaces that were quote-unquote separate but equal. Such spaces, as it turned out, were always separate but never equal. This American apartheid persisted until the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s, which ended explicit forms of legal discrimination. Yet the movement only began the process of ending the cultural forms of white privilege that had subordinated blacks all along. Since the 1960s, African Americans have faced discrimination in employment, a lack of educational access and consequently lower educational outcomes, discrimination from lending institutions and consequently lower access to home ownership. They have encountered vastly unequal treatment under the justice system, including mass incarceration. This has been described by civil rights activist Michelle Alexander as the new Jim Crow, because as much as 80% of African American men in some major cities have a criminal record. African Americans have less access to adequate health care and consequently suffer from lower health outcomes. They have less access to clean air and water, less access to the internet, and worse still is that there remain attempts to restrict their voting, particularly in the South. Hundreds of years ago, Spanish sailors forced Filipinos onto their galleons to serve as deckhands on their return trips to New Spain. African Americans would later come on different boats under far more inhuman circumstances. Yet, in the ensuing centuries, we came to share much with them as we toiled under the same sun. During Black History Month, Kababayans, we could learn about the history of our black brothers and sisters and the challenges that they still face, because now we're all on the same boat.
Maraming salamat to Professor Brandon Riley. And for watching our show today, Kababayan Today celebrates Black History Month. Maraming salamat po.